The sun beat down on the Mojave Desert with a heat that felt physical, like a heavy weight pressing down on everything. In the middle of this endless sea of sand and rock, there was a scar. It was a crater miles wide, and in the center of it lay the ship. It didn't look like the spaceships from old movies. It was sleek and dark, a jagged mountain of metal that defied the laws of physics. It sat silent, half buried in the dust. It had been there for 5 years. 5 years of silence, 5 years of fear, and 5 years of humanity trying to figure out what to do with the corpse of a god. Tom wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his greasy hand. He adjusted his goggles and looked up at the massive wall of alien alloy in front of him. It was taller than the tallest skyscraper in New York. To Tom, it was just a very difficult puzzle. "Pass me the laser cutter," Tom said, his voice muffled by his breathing mask. David, who was standing on a scaffold nearby, reached down and handed him the heavy tool. "You think this will work, Tom? We've been cutting into the section for 3 weeks. It doesn't even scratch it." Tom took the cutter and strapped it to his wrist. "We aren't cutting it, David. We are tricking it. This metal isn't just metal. It reacts to energy. If we hit the right frequency, it will let us in." Below them, on the desert floor, a jeep drove up the path made of crushed rocks. It stopped near the bottom of the scaffold, and a woman stepped out. She wore a military uniform that was neatly pressed despite the desert heat. She looked up, shielding her eyes with a hand. It was Jessica. She was the link between the scientists and the government. She was the reason they had funding, and she was the reason they had a deadline. She climbed up the ladder with ease, stepping onto the scaffold where Tom and David were working. "Any progress?" Jessica asked. She didn't waste time with greetings. Tom pointed the laser cutter at a small seam in the dark metal. "Watch this." He pulled the trigger. A beam of red light hit the ship. Usually, the light just scattered. But today, Tom had adjusted the frequency. The metal seemed to ripple, like water in a pond. The red light didn't bounce off, it sank in. The dark metal turned a bright, glowing red for a second, and then a hiss of air escaped. A panel the size of a door slid open, revealing a dark corridor inside the ship. David almost dropped his wrench. It worked. It actually worked. Jessica stepped closer, looking into the opening. It smelled like ozone and stale air. "Good job, Tom. We are running out of time. The satellites picked up another signal last night. It's getting closer." Tom turned off the cutter and lowered his arm. "The Harbinger." Jessica nodded grimly. "Yes. Whatever killed this ship is coming back to finish the job. The military wants weapons, Tom. Not just answers. They want to know if this broken pile of junk can fight back." "It's not junk," Tom said, feeling a strange need to defend the ship. "It's wounded. It's like a sleeping animal. If we wake it up, we need to be careful. If it thinks we are enemies, it will kill us all before the Harbinger even gets here." "We don't have a choice," Jessica said. "We have to try." Over the next few hours, the mood at the camp changed. The discovery of the entrance sent a wave of excitement through the crew. Teams of engineers and scientists began to bring equipment inside. They set up bright lights that chased away the shadows inside the alien hallway. Tom walked at the front, holding a scanner. The inside of the ship was confusing. There were no sharp corners. Everything was curved and smooth. The walls glowed with a faint, pulsing light, but it was dim, like a heartbeat that was too slow. "It's reading a power source," Tom said, looking at the small screen in his hand. Deep down. But it's weak. Very weak. Can we jumpstart it? David asked, struggling to carry a heavy battery pack. We're going to try, Tom replied. They walked deeper into the ship. They passed rooms that made no sense. Some were empty except for floating orbs of light. Others had strange tables made of glass. It felt like a tomb, a place where time had stopped. They finally reached the central chamber. It was a huge room, bigger than a football stadium. In the center, suspended in the air by magnetic fields, was a giant sphere. It was the core of the ship. It was dark and covered in dust. Jessica stood next to Tom. She looked at the sphere with a mix of fear and determination. Is that the heart? That's the engine, Tom said. And the brain? It connects to the pilot. We can't just turn a key. We have to interface with it directly. He walked over to a console near the sphere. It was covered in symbols that nobody could read. But Tom knew machines. He knew energy. He pulled a cable from his backpack. On one end, it was a standard US military plug. On the other end, he had rigged a series of electrodes and sensors. What are you doing? Jessica asked, her hand resting on her holster nervously. I'm going to introduce myself, Tom said. Our computers are too slow to talk to this thing. I need to bridge the gap. I'm going to feed a signal from our generator into the core. It might hurt it, but it should wake it up. If it wakes up and attacks, Jessica warned, I have orders to destroy the core. Then we all die, Tom said simply. Because this ship is the only shield we have. Tom climbed a ladder to the console. He plugged the cable into a port he had guessed was an input terminal. Then, he signaled David outside on the radio. David, turn it on. Slowly. Outside the ship, massive generators roared to life. The sound was like thunder, drowning out the wind. Electricity surged through thick cables, snaking its way across the desert floor and into the ship. Tom watched the console. At first, nothing happened. Then, the symbols on the screen began to move. They spun and rearranged themselves. The giant sphere in the center of the room began to hum. It was a low sound that Tom felt in his teeth more than he heard with his ears. Energy levels rising, Tom shouted over the noise of the generators. It's accepting the charge. Suddenly, the room was flooded with blue light. It came from the walls, the floor, and the sphere. It was beautiful and terrifying. The sphere began to spin. The dust was blown away by a sudden wind that came from nowhere. Jessica stepped back, raising her radio. Camp to all units. Status report. The radio crackled with static. Then, a voice came through, panicked. Ma'am. The hull of the ship is glowing. It's lighting up the whole desert. Tom held onto the console as the ship began to vibrate. The vibration wasn't violent, it felt rhythmic. Thump thump. Thump thump. It was a heartbeat. The ship was alive. Stabilize the input. Tom yelled. Don't give it too much too fast. It's pulling more. David's voice screamed over the radio. It's draining the generators dry. In the center of the room, the sphere turned from black to a deep, angry blue. A beam of light shot up from the sphere, hitting the ceiling miles above them. Then, the beam split and spread out, washing over the entire chamber. Tom felt a tingle on his skin. Then, a voice spoke inside his head. It wasn't a sound, it was a thought. It felt cold and ancient. Who disturbs the sleep? Tom froze. He looked at Jessica. She had heard it too. Her eyes were wide. It's telepathic, Tom whispered. It's talking to us. You are small, the voice said. You are fragile. Why do you wake me? Tom gathered his courage. He spoke out loud, knowing the ship could hear him. Because we are under attack. We need your help. We need you to fly. The blue light flickered. I am broken. My core is fractured. I cannot fly. I can only die. Not if we fix you, Tom said. We have metal. We have tools. We have electricity. We can patch you up. But you have to let us. The ship was silent for a long moment. The humming died down a little. The presence in Tom's mind felt curious now, probing his thoughts. It saw images of Earth, of war, of fear. It saw the desperation in the humans. You use crude tools, the ship said. But your will is strong. Very well. I will allow the connection. The sphere dimmed slightly. The violent vibration stopped. The blue light became a soft, steady glow. The ship didn't feel angry anymore, it felt waiting. Tom let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He looked down at Jessica. She lowered her radio. Her face was pale, but she smiled a little. Did we just make a deal with an alien spaceship? She asked. I think we just became its mechanics, Tom replied. He climbed down the ladder. His legs were shaky. He looked around the chamber. The ship was awake, but it was still a wreck. Wires hung from the ceiling. Panels were missing. It was like a patient who had just woken up from a coma but couldn't move their legs. Don't celebrate yet, Tom said to David and Jessica as they walked back toward the exit. We woke it up, but it can't fight. It said it's broken. We have to fix it. And we have to build controls. Humans can't fly this thing with our minds. We need a steering wheel. We have engineers, Jessica said. We have the best minds in the country. We will figure it out. They stepped out of the ship and back into the bright sunlight of the Mojave. The desert looked different now. Above them, the dark hull of the ship was glowing with a soft pulse. It was alive. Tom looked up at the sky. It was a clear, endless blue. But he knew that somewhere out there, beyond the blue, something else was coming. Something that wanted to destroy them. We have work to do, Tom said. He walked toward the mess tent, grabbing a bottle of water on the way. The water was warm, but it tasted good. For the first time in 5 years, Tom felt a spark of hope. It was a crazy, dangerous hope, but it was there. The game had changed. They weren't just staring at a mystery anymore. They were building a weapon. And humanity, when pushed into a corner, was very good at building weapons. The desert wind blew, kicking up dust around the ship. The giant vessel seemed to shudder, settling deeper into the sand, waiting for the humans to make the next move. Tom drank the water and turned back to work. The hardest part was just beginning. The days that followed were a blur of noise and sparks. The ship was awake, but it was like a giant sleeping on a broken leg. It could groan and flash lights, but it couldn't run. Tom spent every hour inside the central chamber, staring at schematics that made his head hurt. We can't just weld it, Tom said, pointing at a holographic projection of the ship's engine core. The metal is alive. If we use a regular blowtorch, it screams. We need to bond with it. Jessica stood beside him, looking tired. She wore the same uniform as yesterday, and her eyes had dark circles under them. I don't care if it screams, Tom. I care if it flies. The harbinger is getting closer. Our satellites say it will be here in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We need this ship in the air. We are trying, Tom said, rubbing his face. But the interface is the problem. The ship reads thoughts. Humans don't have strong enough minds to fly it alone. We need a buffer. They had brought in the best pilots from the Air Force, but none of them could handle the connection. One pilot sat in the command chair and passed out within seconds. Another started screaming and had to be pulled out. The alien mind was too strong, too fast, and too angry. It overwhelmed the human brain. Tom walked out of the tent and onto the gantry. Below him, the ground was a hive of activity. Trucks drove back and forth, carrying steel beams, generators, and miles of cabling. The military had decided that since they couldn't fly the ship the alien way, they would fly it the human way. They were going to strip the controls out of a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber and bolt them into the alien command deck. It was a crazy plan. It was like putting a steering wheel from a car onto a jet fighter. But Tom didn't have any better ideas. He watched as a crane lowered a heavy metal console into the open side of the ship. David was down there, directing the operators. Easy. Easy. David shouted, waving his arms. Don't scratch the hull. The metal console hit the deck with a loud clang. Tom winced. He knew the ship felt that vibration. The blue lights in the corridor flickered, as if the ship was annoyed. Great, Tom muttered. Now we're just making it angry. He climbed down the ladder to the main deck. The inside of the ship was changing. The smooth, alien curves were being covered in ugly gray boxes. Wires were taped to the walls. It looked messy. It looked like a battlefield between two different worlds. Robert was standing by the new pilot seat. He was a quiet man, older than the other pilots. He had silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. He was wearing a flight suit that was covered in wires and sensors. Does this look safe to you, Bob? Tom asked. Robert looked at the jury-rigged controls. He touched the stick, which was connected to a bundle of cables that ran into the ship's floor. Safe? No. It looks like a death trap. But if it flies, I'll drive it. We are ready to test the connection, Jessica said, walking up behind them. She held a clipboard. Robert, are you sure you want to do this? The neural feedback could be lethal. If I don't do it, the harbinger blows us all up, Robert said calmly. He sat down in the seat. Hook me in. Tom and David worked quickly. They placed a helmet on Robert's head. It was a strange mix of a pilot's helmet and a medical cap, covered in electrodes. They plugged the helmet into the alien console. Power is on, David said, his voice shaking. Generators are stable. Robert took a deep breath. I'm going in. Talk to me, Tom. Tom watched a monitor that showed Robert's brain waves. Okay, Bob. Just visualize. Don't force it. Imagine you are touching the ship's mind. Like reaching out a hand. Robert closed his eyes. For a minute, nothing happened. The hum of the generators was the only sound. Then, the ship reacted. The lights in the room turned red. A loud siren began to wail, coming from the walls themselves. It wasn't a mechanical siren, it was a sound of pure distress. The floor shook violently. Robert grabbed the armrests of his chair, his knuckles turning white. It's fighting me. Robert yelled through gritted teeth. It doesn't want to leave. It's terrified. Hold on. Tom shouted. Jessica, override the safety protocols. Force the connection. Jessica ran to a panel and typed a command. I'm diverting all power to the interface. It's going to hurt. She flipped a heavy switch. A massive surge of electricity shot through the cables. The alien ship screamed. The sound was so loud that Tom fell to his knees, covering his ears. It felt like the scream was inside his skull. The ship was in pain. The humans were torturing it into submission. It was a brutal act of domination. Tom hated it, but he knew they had no choice. Robert, take control. Tom yelled. Show it who is boss. Robert screamed. His body arched against the straps. He was fighting a mental war. He was pushing his human will against the alien fear. The ship wanted to shut down, to go back to sleep, to hide from the Harbinger. But Robert forced it to stay awake. Suddenly, the red lights turned to a blinding white. The screaming stopped. The silence was instant and shocking. Tom stood up slowly. The ship was humming again, but the pitch was different. It was higher, faster. It sounded like an engine revving up. Status, Jessica asked, her hand on her gun. Robert opened his eyes. They were glowing with a faint blue light. He looked at Tom, but his voice didn't sound like his own. It echoed. Connection, established, Robert said. Primitive systems, interfaced. Tom stared at him. Bob, you okay? I am, here, Robert said. But the ship is screaming in the back of my head. I have to keep it focused. Outside the ship, the ground began to tremble. Dust rose from the desert floor. The massive anti-gravity engines, dormant for 5 years, began to spin. A low rumble built up, shaking the bones of everyone on the base. It's lifting. David yelled, looking out the open hatch. The ship didn't rise gently. It lurched upward, tearing free of the sand and rock that held it. It hovered unsteadily, wobbling like a drunk man standing up for the first time. Tom grabbed the railing to steady himself. We need to test the weapons. If the Harbinger gets here, we need to be able to shoot back. Robert's hands moved over the human controls. The ship responded instantly. The strange, patchwork connection was working. The ship turned its massive nose toward a distant mountain range, 10 miles away. Target locked, Robert said. His voice sounded tired. This weapon, it's not a gun. It tears space. It feels wrong to use it. Do it, Jessica ordered. Robert pushed the red button on the console. A beam of distorted light shot out from the ship's belly. It wasn't a laser beam. The air around the beam rippled and twisted. It hit the distant mountain. There was no explosion, no fire. A section of the mountain, half a mile wide, simply vanished. It was crushed out of existence. Then, a sound wave rolled over the desert, shaking the jeep and the tents. Tom watched in horror. The weapon erased the matter. It was the most destructive thing he had ever seen. Target destroyed, Robert said softly. The ship is pleased. It likes the power. The ship hovered higher, breaking through the cloud layer. The desert below looked tiny. For the first time in 5 years, the ship was free. Jessica looked at Tom. We did it. We made it a weapon. Tom looked at the cables and the messy wires, then at the pilot who looked possessed. Yeah. But at what cost? We forced a sentient being to wake up, strapped it to a chair, and pointed a gun at its head. If it ever figures out how to get rid of us. It won't, Jessica said, but she didn't sound sure. We are the only ones who can fix it. Robert landed the ship back on the desert floor. The landing was hard, throwing everyone off balance. The blue lights faded to a dull pulse. Robert slumped in the chair, unconscious. David and two medics ran forward to unstrap him. Is he alive? Tom asked. He's breathing, David said. Just exhausted. Tom stood on the deck, looking around the alien room. They had done the impossible. They had turned a broken artifact into a war machine. But as he looked at the dark ceiling, he felt a cold chill. The ship was watching them. It was learning. It was waiting for the chance to strike back at the Harbinger, and maybe, one day, at the humans who had chained it. We have 1 week to repair the outer hull, Tom said, his voice hard. Let's get to work. The team nodded, fear and adrenaline driving them. They had built the ultimate weapon, but they had also woken a sleeping dragon. And the dragon was not happy. The sky above the Mojave Desert was no longer blue. It was the color of a bruised plum, filled with swirling storm clouds that weren't natural. Far above the atmosphere, the Harbinger had arrived. Tom stood on the metal deck of the Iron Resolve. That was the name the military had given the ship. It felt strange to call the alien vessel by a human name, but nothing about this situation was normal anymore. The wind whipped at his clothes, carrying the smell of ozone and fear. The Harbinger was a nightmare in the stars. It was 3 times the size of the Resolve, perfect and clean. It sat in the sky like a hunter waiting for its prey. Small lights flickered around it, fighters scanning the Earth's defenses. It's not attacking yet, Tom said, looking up through his goggles. Jessica stood beside him. She was holding a radio, her knuckles white. It's toying with us. It knows we are here. It knows we fixed its old victim. Inside the ship, Robert sat in the pilot's seat. He hadn't left the chair for 2 days. He was eating and sleeping there. If he disconnected, the link was lost, and the ship would go back to sleep. He looked pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. The ship rumbled beneath their feet. The fear from the alien mind was leaking into the crew. Everyone on the base felt it, a cold weight in their chests. They are launching, Robert's voice came over the loudspeakers. It sounded distant, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. Tom looked at the sky. Beams of yellow light shot down from the Harbinger. They hit the major cities of the world. New York, London, Tokyo. Shields created by the US military flared up, holding for a moment, but then shattered under the power of the alien attack. Our missiles are useless, Michael shouted from the comms tower. They just disintegrate before they even get close. Get us in the air, Jessica yelled into her radio. Now. Robert gripped the controls. The Iron Resolve screamed. It wasn't a mechanical sound, it was the roar of a beast forced to fight. The engines flared with a blinding blue light. The ship tore itself free from the ground, crushing the scaffolding and equipment beneath it. They shot upward. The force of gravity pressed Tom into the deck. He watched through the open bay doors as the desert shrank into a patch of brown. We are heading straight for them, Robert said. The ship wants to run. I am forcing it to fight. Don't let it run, Tom said, scrambling to the bridge. If we run, they will just bomb Earth from above. We have to get their attention. The Iron Resolve broke through the clouds. The view was terrifying. The Earth curved below them, blue and beautiful. Above them, the massive silver hull of the Harbinger blocked out the sun. It was so big that Tom couldn't see the edges of it. Small alien ships swarmed out from the Harbinger like angry bees. They moved fast, dancing around the Resolve. "Here they come," David said, looking at the tactical screen. 40 contacts. 50. Too many. Fire. Jessica ordered. Robert pushed the throttle forward. The gravity distortion gun, the weapon they had tested on the mountain, fired. A wave of twisted space ripped through the void of space. It caught 3 of the small alien ships. They didn't explode, they just crumpled like paper balls and vanished. But there were too many. Red plasma bolts slammed into the Resolve. The shields flared blue, turning bright red with the impact. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared inside the bridge. "Shields down to 60%. David yelled. "Hull breach on the lower deck." Tom held onto a console as sparks flew around him. "We can't win a dogfight. They are faster than us." "We need to do something crazy," Jessica said, looking at the tactical map. "We need to hit the main ship. But their shields are too thick." Robert looked up. His eyes were glowing brighter now. The ship was fully awake. It was angry, and it was learning. "I have an idea," Robert said. "The ship remembers the Harbinger. It remembers the pain it caused. We need to get close. Close enough that their shields can't stop us." "That's suicide," Michael said over the radio. "If you get that close, their point defense guns will shred you." "Not if we are fast," Robert said. Tom looked at the energy readings. The ship was gathering power, but not in the guns. It was gathering it in the drive engines. "Robert," Tom said slowly. "What are you doing?" "The jump drive," Robert said. "It can travel faster than light. I'm going to use it." "You can't jump inside a solar system, the gravity will tear us apart." Tom screamed. "We aren't jumping to another star," Robert said. A strange, calm smile crossed his face. "We are jumping, sideways." Robert slammed the controls forward. The world turned white. Tom felt his stomach lurch. Then, he felt nothing. For a split second, they were nowhere. They were in a tunnel of pure light. The silence was absolute. Then, they slammed back into reality. They were right in front of the Harbinger. Not miles away. Just a few hundred feet. The alien ship filled their entire view. They were so close that Tom could see the lights on the enemy bridge. The Harbinger didn't have time to react. Its shields were designed for long-range combat, not for a ship appearing on its doorstep. "Ramming speed!" Robert roared. The Iron Resolve didn't fire its guns. It used its body. The engines roared at maximum power, pushing the ship forward like a bullet. The jagged, broken nose of the alien ship, reinforced with human steel girders, smashed into the smooth side of the Harbinger. The impact was silent. Space has no sound. But the violence was terrible. The Resolve pierced the hull of the Harbinger like a knife through butter. Debris exploded outward: glass, metal, and atmosphere. The two ships fused together in a deadly embrace. Tom was thrown from his chair. He hit the wall hard. Pain shot through his shoulder. Red lights flashed everywhere. Smoke filled the bridge. "Report." Jessica coughed, pulling herself up. "We breached the enemy hull." David yelled. "We are stuck inside them." "Cut the engines," Tom said, standing up slowly. "Don't push any deeper." The ship shook again. The Harbinger was trying to shake them off. Massive metal beams groaned as the enemy ship twisted. "They are sending boarding parties," Robert said. His voice was weak. "I can sense them. They are coming through the hole we made." Tom looked at the monitor. Sure enough, alien shapes were crawling through the breach in the hull. They were tall, with 4 arms and shining armor. They carried weapons that looked like staves. "Seal the blast doors," Jessica ordered. "Get the security teams to the breach. Tom, get to the engine room. We need to make sure we don't lose power. If we lose power, we're dead." Tom grabbed a medkit and a wrench. "You got it?" He ran out of the bridge and into the corridors. The ship was tilting at a weird angle because they were stuck in the side of the enemy vessel. Gravity was acting strangely. Tom had to climb up walls to get to the ladders. As he passed through the ship, he could feel the mood of the iron resolve. It was scared, but it was also proud. It had hurt its enemy. It had finally struck back. Tom reached the engine room. It was chaos. Steam was hissing from pipes. David's team was running around, trying to keep the generators online. The shock damaged the cooling system. One of the engineers yelled. Tom looked at the spinning core. It was pulsing red. "We need to bypass the coolant, reroute it through the secondary vents. That will flood the lower decks with radiation. Then get everyone out of the lower decks," Tom shouted. He grabbed a large lever and pulled it. The machine groaned. The red pulse slowed down and turned a steady blue. The hum stabilized. "Good work," a voice said behind him. Tom turned to see Robert standing in the doorway. He looked like a ghost. He was pale and sweating. "Bob, you should be in the chair," Tom said. Robert shook his head. "The chair isn't flying anymore. The ship is reacting on its own. It knows what to do. I had to come to warn you. The Harbinger isn't just a ship. It's connected to its crew. It's going to try to hack our minds." As if on cue, Tom felt a sharp pain in his head. It was like an ice pick stabbing his brain. He fell to his knees, dropping his wrench. The engineers around him cried out, collapsing as well. A voice spoke in Tom's mind. It wasn't the Resolve's voice. It was cold, calculated, and hateful. "Surrender," the voice said. "Your existence is an error." Tom fought the pain. He grabbed the edge of a console to pull himself up. "We don't surrender," he gritted out. The ship shook violently. The alien boarding party had reached the engine room. The blast doors at the far end melted under a blast of plasma. 6 alien soldiers walked in. They raised their weapons. Tom looked at the engineers. They were down, writhing in pain from the mental attack. There was no one to fight. Tom stood alone between the aliens and the core. He held his wrench. He knew it was useless. But he didn't step back. The Resolve seemed to sense his defiance. The lights in the engine room turned from blue to bright gold. The mental attack suddenly stopped, pushed back by a surge of power from the ship itself. "Not today," the Resolve growled in Tom's mind. The floor beneath the aliens turned into liquid metal. They sank up to their knees. The ship was using its body to trap them. It was fighting back alongside the humans. Tom smiled grimly. "We aren't done yet." The battle for the ship had begun, but it wasn't just a battle of guns anymore. It was a battle for control. And the humans had brought something to the fight the aliens didn't expect, a stubborn refusal to die. The silence in the engine room was heavy, broken only by the wet sound of the aliens struggling. The floor of the iron resolve had turned into black sludge, holding the invaders tight. They were trapped up to their waists, their forearms flailing uselessly. Tom stood there, breathing hard. His head still throbbed from the mental attack, but the pain was fading. The alien voice inside his head was gone, replaced by the familiar, confused hum of the ship he had woken up. Tom! David yelled, pulling himself up from the floor. The floor! It's eating them! Tom looked. The metal wasn't just holding them, it was dissolving them. The alien soldiers screamed, a sound like tearing metal. They were being consumed by the ship. Let it happen, Tom said grimly. We don't have time for prisoners. He ran to the main console. The screen was flashing red warnings. The Harbinger is trying to cut us loose. If they detach us, we'll be drifting dead in space. Can we stop them? David asked, wiping grease from his face. We can't stop them, Tom said. But we can make sure they don't survive the separation. High above in the command center, the situation was just as bad. Jessica was shouting orders, trying to coordinate the human soldiers who were guarding the breach points. The corridors of the Iron Resolve were a war zone. Aliens were pouring in, forcing the humans back. Robert sat in the pilot's chair, motionless. His eyes were open, but he wasn't seeing the bridge. He was in the digital world. He was fighting a war that no one else could see. You are weak, the cold voice of the Harbinger echoed in Robert's mind. Your biology is fragile. Your code is messy. Robert gritted his teeth. We are stubborn. That's enough. He felt the enemy trying to penetrate the ship's firewall. It was like a wall of ice trying to crush a paper cup. But the paper cup was filled with something the ice didn't understand, chaos. Robert opened a channel to Tom in the engine room. Tom. I need you to upload the virus. Now. Tom grabbed a hardened drive case from his belt. It was the plan they had discussed but hoped never to use. It was a logic bomb. Tom didn't use code, he used culture. Plugging it in, Tom said. He jammed the drive into the main port. Upload the noise. On the screen, a progress bar appeared. But instead of data, the feed was uploading everything Tom could find. Rock music from the 80s, videos of laughing babies, the entire history of the internet forums, screams of terror, and speeches of love. It was a massive, confusing wave of human emotion and static. The effect on the Harbinger was instant. In the bridge of the alien ship, the perfect order shattered. The alien crew, connected by a hive mind, suddenly heard a deafening roar of electric guitars and screaming voices. Their logic circuits couldn't process the randomness. They stopped moving, clutching their heads. What is happening? One of the aliens on the Iron Resolve yelled, dropping its weapon. The harmony. It is broken. Jessica saw her chance. Fire. Take them out. The human soldiers opened fire. Their bullets ripped through the confused aliens. The tide of the battle turned. The chaos of the human mind was a weapon that the perfect aliens couldn't defend against. In the engine room, Tom watched the energy levels spike. It's working. The Harbinger's systems are crashing. Their shields are down. But there was a problem. The Iron Resolve was taking too much damage. The collision had cracked the main spine of the ship. The breach where they were connected to the enemy was widening. Fire was spreading through the human sector. Robert's voice came over the comms, strained and weak. Tom, we have to do it now. We have to burn the core. Tom froze. Bob, that will kill us. The ship will be vaporized. We are already dead, Robert said calmly. The Harbinger is charging its main gun. They are going to fire at zero range. It will destroy both ships. We have to overload our core first. We need to turn this ship into a bomb. Tom looked at the spinning sphere in the center of the room. It was the heart of the ship. He had spent months fixing it, talking to it, trying to understand it. Now, he had to tell it to die. Is there another way? Tom whispered. No, Robert said. Jessica is evacuating the crew to the escape pods. You need to get to the bay. Now. What about you? I have to stay, Robert said. The ship won't listen to a computer command to self-destruct. It has to be a willing sacrifice. I have to show the ship why. Tom felt tears stinging his eyes. He looked at the trapped aliens, the sparks flying, the flashing lights. He didn't want to run. Go, Tom. Robert commanded. Tom turned and ran. He sprinted through the corridors, dodging debris and falling metal. He reached the escape pod bay just as the last pod was filling up. Tom. Get in. Jessica waved from the open hatch. Tom jumped in. The hatch sealed, and the pod blasted away from the dying ship. Tom sat by the small window, watching the iron resolve. It was stuck into the side of the massive Harbinger like a thorn. Inside the bridge of the alien ship, Robert sat alone. The sounds of battle were gone. The virus had silenced the enemy. It was just him and the ship. It's okay, Robert whispered aloud. We are tired. We can rest. He felt the mind of the ship reach out to him. It was scared. It didn't want to die. Robert let his own mind flow into it. He showed the ship memories of Earth. He showed it the sunset over the ocean, the feeling of wind on a mountain, the taste of cold water. He showed it that life was beautiful, even if it was short. We will save them, Robert thought. We will save the world. The ship understood. It accepted the pain. Robert grabbed the manual override. Goodbye. He pushed the lever all the way up. The core of the iron resolve didn't explode, it unraveled. The gravity engine spun out of control. It created a black hole, but only for a split second. A sphere of pure darkness expanded instantly from the center of the ship. The gravity wave swallowed the iron resolve. Then, it swallowed the front section of the Harbinger. The massive alien ship, the size of a city, was folded in half. The metal twisted and snapped like dry twigs. The impossible force of the collapsing core crushed the enemy ship into a ball of scrap the size of a house. There was no sound in the vacuum of space. Just a flash of white light, followed by the expanding ring of debris. The most dangerous weapon in the galaxy had been destroyed by a broken ship and a tired pilot. In the escape pod, Tom shielded his eyes as the light faded. The shock wave hit the pod, tossing it around like a toy. Status. Jessica yelled, holding onto her seat. The Harbinger is gone, David said, his voice trembling as he looked at the sensors. It's just dust. The resolve is gone too. The pod floated silently in the darkness. Behind them, the earth hung in the sky, blue and safe. The storm clouds were already starting to clear. Tom stared at the empty space where the two ships had been. He felt a hollow ache in his chest. They had won. The enemy was destroyed. But they had lost the greatest discovery in human history. And they had lost a friend. We did it, Tom whispered. We actually did it. Jessica put a hand on his shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just looked out the window. Somewhere in the debris field, a tiny spark of blue light flickered and then died. The iron resolve was silent at last. The fight was over. The humans were going home. 6 months passed quickly. The desert heat of the Mojave felt the same, but the world had changed. The fear of the harbinger was gone, replaced by a new feeling, confidence. Tom stood on a platform overlooking the dry lake bed. He wore a clean jumpsuit with a patch on the chest that showed a ship flying over a planet. In front of him sat the new fleet. They weren't the sleek, smooth ships of aliens. They were rough, angular, and tough. They were human copies of the Iron Resolve, built with every bit of technology Tom's team had managed to understand. There were 5 ships in total. They were smaller than the original, but they were fully functional. They were painted dark gray to match the night sky. Engineers and soldiers swarmed around them, running final checks. Jessica walked up to Tom. She looked healthier now. The dark circles under her eyes were gone. She held a coffee cup in one hand and a tablet in the other. NASA gives the all clear, Jessica said. The orbital docks are ready. The public is watching. Half the world is tuned into the live feed. Tom nodded, looking at the ships. Are the pilots ready? As ready as they can be, Jessica said. They aren't like Robert. None of them can hold the mental link for long. That's why we built the chairs differently. We use an interface now, a buffer. It's safer. Tom looked at the lead ship. It was named the Robert. It was a tribute to their friend. It sat in the center of the lineup. I still miss the old girl, Tom said softly. The original ship. It felt alive. These ones, they feel like machines. They are machines, Tom, Jessica said gently. We can't bring back the dead. But we can use what they left us to protect the living. A siren began to wail across the base. It was a low, steady tone that signaled the start of the launch. Time to go, Jessica said. She offered him her hand. Are you coming with us? Tom looked at the ship, then at the desert. He had spent years here, digging in the sand, fixing broken things. He realized he wasn't a mechanic anymore, he was an explorer. He took her hand. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Tom said. They walked down the platform to the waiting jeeps. They drove to the Robert, boarded the elevator, and rose up into the ship. The bridge looked similar to the old one, but it was cleaner. The screens were new. The buttons were shiny. Tom sat in the observer's seat. Jessica took the command chair next to the pilot. The pilot was a young man named Kevin. He looked nervous. System check, Tom said into the comms. Engines green, came the reply from the engine room. It was David's voice. He had survived the escape and was now the chief engineer of the fleet. Life support is online. Gravity drive is standing by. Let's take her up, Jessica ordered. The fleet began to move. It wasn't the violent, shuddering lurch of the first launch. It was smooth. The human-made ships rose slowly, in perfect formation. They broke the sound barrier with a unified boom that echoed across the desert. They climbed higher, leaving the atmosphere behind. Tom watched through the main viewport. The sky turned from blue to purple, and then to black. The curve of the Earth appeared. It was beautiful. We are in orbit, Kevin said. Docking with the station in 10 minutes. But they weren't just docking. They were loading supplies. The United Nations had decided that humanity shouldn't stay in the backyard. The fleet was going to the edge of the solar system. They were going to set up an outpost. They were going to show the galaxy that Earth was not a prey animal anymore. After 2 days of loading, the fleet was ready. The space station was behind them. The moon was just a gray rock to the left. "Set course for the asteroid belt," Jessica commanded. "Maximum speed." The 5 ships aligned themselves. The space in front of them warped. Stars stretched into lines of light. They jumped. The journey was short. In a blink of an eye, they were millions of miles away. The asteroid belt loomed ahead of them, a massive field of floating rocks and ice. It was the perfect place to hide a base. "Landing confirmed," Kevin said. "We are setting up the habitat modules." Tom and Jessica went down to the surface of a large asteroid. They put on their space suits and walked on the gray dust. It was silent and peaceful. Construction robots were already building walls and domes. "Look at this," Tom said, pointing his gloved hand at the stars. "We are building a home out here." "We are building a fortress," Jessica corrected. "We learned a hard lesson. The universe is dangerous. If we want to survive, we need to be strong." Suddenly, a light flashed on Tom's wrist comms. It was a deep space signal. It wasn't from Earth. "What is that?" Tom asked. He tuned the frequency. A voice came through. It wasn't English, and it wasn't the angry hissing of the Harbinger. It was a series of complex musical tones. But the universal translator on the ship began to decode it. The translation appeared on Tom's visor screen. It read, "You have destroyed the Harbinger. You are a threat. Stay in your system, or face the consequences." Tom looked at Jessica. She read the message too. She didn't look scared. She looked angry. "They think we will stay hidden," Jessica said. "They don't know us very well," Tom replied. The fleet was fully operational. The Robert sat on the asteroid, its guns powering up. They had alien technology, human ingenuity, and a drive to survive. They weren't just fixing a broken toy anymore. They were the masters of their own destiny. Tom looked up at the endless ocean of stars. The darkness didn't feel scary anymore. It felt like a challenge. "Send a message back," Tom said. "To who?" Jessica asked. "To whoever is listening." Tom thought for a moment. He remembered Robert. He remembered the ship that gave its life for them. "Tell them this," Tom said clearly. "We are Earth. We broke your ship, and we built our own. We are coming for dinner." Jessica smiled. She tapped the controls. The message was sent out into the void, a radio wave traveling at the speed of light, carrying the voice of humanity to the stars. The 5 ships lifted off from the asteroid, their engines burning bright blue against the black space. They formed a V shape, like a flock of geese, and flew toward the unknown. Tom stood on the bridge of the Robert. He watched the stars rush past. The past was behind them. The future was wide open. Humanity had found its ultimate weapon, and it was the courage to reach for the stars. The story was over, but the adventure had just begun.